Hey, everyone. And I've got a major weather update that we really need to talk about. There's a massive storm system on the way, and it's shaping up to be a multi-day regional severe weather outbreak with a whole mix of dangerous conditions. We're talking about the potential for a serious tornado outbreak, an extreme wildfire threat, possible flash flooding, and even a blizzard, all happening at the same time. This is the kind of setup that doesn't happen often, and it's going to affect millions of people across a huge part of the country. So let's not waste any time and really dive into this forecast so you can understand just how big and dangerous this storm could be. But before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. Starting off with Friday, March 14, 2025. The Storm Prediction Center, SECA, just issued a fresh outlook, and it's already showing a pretty alarming situation. We've got an enhanced risk of severe weather stretching all the way from southeastern Iowa down through northwestern Alabama. This is a huge area, and an enhanced risk on day 3 of the outlook is not something we see very often. That tells us just how confident forecasters already are about the severity of this system. It's also very likely that at least part of this region could see an upgrade to a higher risk category as we get closer to the event. If you're in cities like Peoria, Illinois, or Springfield, or even down in St. Louis, you need to be paying close attention. The same goes for southwestern Kentucky, western Tennessee, including Memphis, and parts of Mississippi and Alabama, like Tupelo and areas near Huntsville. This is shaping up to be a pretty dangerous day for severe weather across this entire region. Now, while tornadoes are definitely possible on Friday, I personally think the biggest threat that day will be from straight line damaging winds. We're likely looking at a huge line of severe storms stretching across a massive portion of the country. And when you have a system like this, the sheer volume of damaging wind reports can be staggering. We're talking about thousands and thousands of instances of tree damage, roofs being torn off homes, mobile homes being flipped. And while it might not all be tornado driven, the damage from those winds can be just as destructive and widespread. The worst part, the system could end up affecting 20 to 30 million people. That's a huge number of people under threat. And I really want everyone in this risk area to take it seriously. It's going to be a long and destructive day. And from what I can tell, we'll probably be live covering this for an extended period of time because of how intense it's shaping up to be. But even with all of that, the latest trends suggest that Saturday, March 15, could actually be even worse when it comes to tornado activity. There's already a broad slight risk area extending from Ohio and Pennsylvania all the way down to Louisiana and Florida. But what's really concerning is that the SPC has issued a 30 risk area, which is pretty high this far out for parts of southeastern Tennessee, the Gulf Coast, and surrounding regions. This is the area where we're likely to see the most significant tornado potential, possibly more supercells, larger tornadoes, and a greater overall tornado risk compared to Friday's system. That being said, we can't overlook the tornado threat on Friday either. While the primary concern remains damaging winds, there's still a chance for a few strong tornadoes as the system moves through late Friday night into the early hours of Saturday morning. And unfortunately, any tornadoes we do get on Friday are likely to happen at night, which makes them even more dangerous. Nocturnal tornadoes are harder to spot and harder to warn for, and they catch people off guard when they're asleep. So if you're in southern Illinois, northern Mississippi, or northern Alabama, you need to have a way to receive weather alerts while you're sleeping. Let's take a step back and look at how this storm is going to develop. On Thursday, March 13, the western U.S. is going to start seeing the early impacts of this system. We're expecting heavy snow across Idaho and parts of California, along with some significant rainfall along the coast of California, Oregon, and Washington. But the real danger doesn't show itself until the system crosses the Rocky Mountains and starts undergoing rapid cyclogenesis over the plains. But before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. When that happens, and it's going to happen fast, we're going to see a very deep low pressure system develop with pressures potentially dropping to 980 or even 970 MB. That's an incredibly powerful storm system. By Friday evening, around 5 to 8 p.m., we're going to see a massive line of storms form where the cold, dry air wrapping around the low collides with warm, moist air being pulled up from the Gulf of Mexico. This squall line is going to be absolutely destructive, and wind gusts of 70 to 80 MPa are very possible. As this line moves into areas like Des Moines and Cedar Rapids later in the night, closer to 10 or 11 p.m., things could get even more intense. Down south, where there's more moisture and instability, we could see more isolated supercell activity. Places like Memphis could start seeing a heightened tornado threat between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m., and that's where we need to be especially vigilant for strong, potentially long-track tornadoes. By Saturday afternoon, the situation takes another turn. While the initial squall line moves into Canada and starts to lose its severe weather punch, a secondary system begins forming along the trail. This secondary system is going to have way more moisture to work with, thanks to consistent transport of warm, humid air from the Gulf. With that increased moisture and daytime heating, Saturday is shaping up to be a much more robust tornado day across the deep south. By 2 p.m. on Saturday, we'll likely see a new round of powerful storms forming across Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and parts of Tennessee. And this is where things start getting very concerning. We're seeing indications of extremely strong low-level jet stream winds aligning perfectly with this high moisture environment, creating the perfect conditions for violent tornadoes. This setup could potentially warrant a rare high-risk outlook from the SPSI. But of course, it's still a few days out, and there's time for things to change. As we look even further ahead, this system will continue pushing eastward into Sunday, March 16, impacting the entire eastern seaboard with severe weather. We're not quite sure about the specifics yet, but roughly 50 million people could be at risk for strong storms, damaging winds, and isolated tornadoes. And let's not forget the blizzard conditions on the backside of this storm. South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota, and parts of Nebraska are all looking at heavy snow and extremely strong winds. While the snowfall totals aren't expected to be huge, maybe 3 to 6 inches in some areas, the combination of snow and wind gusts up to 70 MPa will create true blizzard conditions, making travel nearly impossible. One of the biggest threats for Friday is those dangerous, damaging winds, but we're also looking at the potential for extremely large hail. In some areas, hailstones could be as big as baseballs. If you've got a vehicle, make sure you're keeping it protected, especially if you're in areas like St. Louis, Southeast Iowa, or northern Mississippi. And then there's the tornado risk, and this is where things start to get really concerning. We already have a large 10 hatched region stretching from Southeast Iowa all the way down into Alabama and Mississippi. That's weather speak for an elevated chance of strong, potentially long-track tornadoes. The timing for these storms is going to start around 5 p.m. and continue into the early overnight hours. And what's especially worrying is that some of these tornadoes could happen after dark, which, as we all know, makes them even more dangerous because they're harder to see, and people are often asleep when warnings go out. If you live anywhere in the areas I just mentioned, please make sure you have a tornado action plan in place. You need multiple ways to receive alerts, whether that's through weather apps, NOAA weather radios, or local news stations. And you should know exactly where your safe space is in your home. Nighttime tornadoes are no joke, and being prepared ahead of time can literally save your life. Anyway, while you're getting ready, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Now let's talk about Saturday, because as bad as Friday looks, Saturday's shaping up to be even worse. The Storm Prediction Center has already issued another moderate risk for severe weather across eastern Louisiana, central and southern Mississippi, and central and southern Alabama. This area, often referred to as Dixie Alley, has a long history of producing violent, long-track tornadoes, and the conditions on Saturday look absolutely prime for that kind of activity. If you live in this region, please don't get too focused on what risk category you're in, whether it's slight, enhanced, or moderate, because the truth is the whole area is at risk. We're expecting a combination of damaging winds, large hail, and several tornadoes. Some of those tornadoes could be strong and stay on the ground for miles. The most dangerous window for these storms will likely be from about noon to 8 p.m., but severe weather could happen before and after that time frame. So stay alert all day. If you live in a mobile home, I cannot stress this enough. Make sure you have a sturdy, safe place to go when storms approach. Don't wait until a tornado warning is issued to start figuring out where you're going to take shelter. By that time, it might already be too late. As if all that wasn't enough, we've also got a major fire risk developing in the southern plains tomorrow. On the backside of this low pressure system, we're going to see incredibly high winds with gusts reaching 70 to 80 miles per hour, combined with very low humidity. That's a recipe for fast spreading wildfires across parts of Oklahoma, Kansas, and Texas. If you're in these areas, please take extra precautions to prevent any fires from starting, and be ready to act quickly if something does ignite. Even as we move into Saturday, the fire risk isn't completely gone. Winds will still be strong across West and South Texas. So the potential for new fires and fast spreading flames will stick around through the weekend. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon. Stay safe out there, stay weather aware, and I'll catch you with the next update.